Hello and welcome to Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. This is going to be a fun show. This is episode number 280, and my guest is John Orlandello. He's a flat earther and very knowledgeable about astrology. Now, as a flat earther, we all know the stars are much closer than we've been told. So should we be reevaluating astrology? Is there a 13th astrological sign? We're going to cover that. John's been on Truth Frequency Radio with Jaron on Jaronism Raw, and you might have heard him on there. And if not, we're going to get to new information here. Either way, if you heard that show or not, we're going to discuss DITR8's Flat Earth app and the new zodiac wheel that is now a part of it. We're going to talk about sun signs and moon signs and rising signs and a whole lot more. And I'll be going into the live chat to say hello. And I don't know, maybe we'll talk about your specific signs. I thank everybody for being here, and let's welcome John Orlandello. John, thank you for coming on, taking your time, and you've got a prop there too. Oh, your mic. Have to unmute your mic.
Sorry about that, Patricia.
It's
Thanks so much for having me.
Mark Sargent always says it's a rookie mistake, and you hate to see it whenever we make mistakes. We all do.
Yeah, I'm a rookie on the Google Hangout for sure. And I appreciate you having me tonight. I'm excited to be here. And this prop here is a flat earth clock that I made. It's just a 24-hour clock. And of course, the hour hand simulating the sun going around the plane. Now,
I put links in the description box to your channel, and you don't have a whole lot on there. And I also put a link to your Instagram. And those are the two methods where people are able to see you doing what you do, right?
Correct. Yeah. On my Instagram page, I spend a good amount of time on there. It's kind of a mixed bag. I have a little bit of family and a little bit of conspiracy and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I spend a lot of time on the writings though, so you might find that interesting. And then my YouTube page, I occasionally post a few videos, but I mostly am watching videos like yours and Jaron and others, you know.
Well, eventually, like in a week from now, put this one on your channel if you want to.
No, I thought about that. I wanted even to, like, you know how some people put it on during, but I couldn't figure that out.
You know what? Sometimes I can't even figure out how to start my own show. And it's not because I lack the intelligence. It's complicated sometimes, and YouTube and Google change things up. So every time you start a show, it's like, oh no, now what have they done? But anyway, we're here. The live chat's got lots of great people in it. And let's start talking about you, where you live, how you got out of the matrix and into the whole flat earth journey.
Okay. Kind of a long story, because from my youth, I grew up with parents who were kind of out of the 60s and had some traumatic lifestyles and things that they came out of. And they always had a questioning mind on certain things. And they found certain place in Christianity and church where they had different families that they got to know and really became close, almost like new family. And that's kind of the life I grew up with. So it's kind of already a little out of the box, you might say. So that was kind of my beginnings. But as I got older, I didn't really enjoy school as much as I love learning. We'll talk about that with astrology. I really love learning. And that was something that I never really found anything teaching me all that I wanted to know. Even if it was about the Bible, which there seems to be a lot of knowledge about it, I still wasn't satisfied with that. And if it was nature, I wanted to know more than what I could find in whatever it was. And I got to the point where I didn't even enjoy going to school. I was going to seminary, and I decided to go overseas. And I just spent time in different places and kind of settled in Africa for a few years. And over there just had time to question what I thought was real, what I thought I knew, see many different types of lifestyles and different types of people, basically. You know, I really love studying people. Not that I'm studying them, but just we are something specific, you know, well designed, and it's a beautiful thing. And I enjoy that, and I enjoy learning about that. So that was kind of my beginnings. I was over in South Africa, knowing not that the earth was indeed centered, as I say, and fixed, and it is leveled, and, you know, we call it flat. But this, I had no idea when I was over there. But those are the things that kind of opened the space of my life up, that allowed me to, when I began to settle down with a wife, I got married, And as things changed, had kids, I wanted to know, how am I directing these children? You know, how am I aiming them in this life of seeming chaos when I know it's not chaos, but it certainly seems that way. And I began to study what I was going to teach them in school. I figured we would homeschool the kids. It would be good for them, I thought. And I always was going to keep it open to them that if they decide or change, of course, how many kids want to go against the parent? But nevertheless, I was always going to keep it open and try to keep that spirit there for them. And as I began to study all the things I thought I knew, I realized I didn't know them, you know. And that's kind of what, when I heard about the flat earth, I wasn't immediately open to it, of course. And it first came to me through the fixed earth and then the flat earth. And then when it was probably the end of 14, beginning of 15, that a lot of content was online, and I'd only get online every once in a while to check everything. And when I saw what I saw and I began to think about certain things, it really turned me on to the flat earth. And I had already come through, of course, a lot of conspiracies before that, 9/11 most particularly, but I was a big Bill Cooper fan. And I took the 42 classes on Babylon and did all those different things. And I was really into learning about the occult, because the way I grew up, I was afraid of it. I was very afraid of it. And every book I read, everything I did, I was nervous going into it. Like, am I going to hurt myself doing this? Is this going to, you know, somehow steal my spirit, you know, from me by doing this in some way? You know what I mean? And, but I would always go with fear and trembling. And as I went and uncovered in the darkness, all I found was more order that points to the one. And that's what I continue to find. That's what this points to me. And maybe we can talk about that later, but it's all about, with astrology, we're talking about order. We're talking about design, one after another one, after another one, after another one. And somehow through that, there's a flow that reveals the one, the big picture, you know, our whole life. You know, in the beginning, we don't know much, but things begin to expand and such. But this is kind of, my mind is probably the biggest thing that got me into these things, as you could tell already.
I love all of the things you said. And I know that many who are watching and listening are feeling the same feelings, some of the same things you went through, of course, with some differences. Maybe they weren't in Africa, maybe they weren't in seminary school, but a lot of us were brought up with a religious background, or at least a slight bit of that. And we thought we knew how the world worked, but we were still curious. And like you said, education, you got an education, but you didn't feel like you were learning enough. And in Flat Earth, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have people of high level acumen when it comes to their education. And then we have people who couldn't really handle high school because they wanted to learn on their own, kind of what you said. Mm-hmm. And this whole process of awakening we've all gone through has made us all level. Somebody with a PhD equal to somebody who didn't make it through high school, if and only if you have that intention to learn. And in the end, maybe it is all about finding the one. And I'm glad that since we're talking about astrology, you acknowledge there is the one, the creator, something along those lines, because a lot of people in Flat Earth, there's this group of people who believe that anything involving astrology is devil worship. So what do you say to that? Let's get that one cleared up right away.
Sure. And it's funny because I used to memorize the Bible, study the Bible. Of course, I went to seminary to study more about the Bible. I went many places preaching the words that I thought I knew from the Bible. And today I hold the Bible as a book of truth, but I don't hold it in the same ways I once held it. And yet I do find that when I talk to my brothers and sisters out there, they crave for what the Bible, how the Bible verifies what someone might say. It's a standard of truth. And I understand that because it still is that to me on many levels in many different ways. But it's just not the same way as I once was taught. Because just like with the earth, we were taught this one construction, and now we learn that that construction needs to be unfolded, and it's much bigger than what we thought. You see, they tell us that the world is so big because they talk about trillions of miles, but none of us will ever explore any of that. But in reality, the earth that exists that we can explore, with the flat earth, it opens up larger. And that's the whole thing that I find is if what you learn from a book one way and then you learn from it again, if that just verifies that but opens it larger, that's something to pay attention to. So what I would say to that is, when I was a kid, I learned astrology was evil. Never look at that. And I never did. Nothing about it was attractive to me in any way. But then when I started to realize how unfertile and unfruitful and unfounded the church was, when I saw that as an adult, it made me say, I have to learn this again. I need to learn this for my own self, for my one, and I began to go about it a different way. And as I did, I stopped celebrating all the holidays, as we call them. So this was something. And at first I thought they were so pagan. Well, now I would call myself a pagan, because to me, pagan just means out of the box. I think of words as what they truly come from, their origin. And to me, pagan's just not in control, and some of them are really bad and some of them are really great. And I'm just doing my best to honor the one that created me. And that's what I'm doing. And I don't claim that it's good or bad. I'm doing my best I can, and that's what we're all trying to do. So when I began to stop doing the holidays, Christmas comes around, and if you're not involved, what are you doing? Right? It's 60 days of madness. So for our family, that was something at first that we grieved. We were like, how do we approach this? Because even we don't know how to do it. And I began to just kind of muse on those things. And I thought of the 3 wise men, as they're called. And I thought, oh, let me study these guys. What the heck is this story really about? What is the real nuts and bolts of it all, And I began to look into that story, and that's what got me into astrology.
So the 3 wise men are maybe luminaries?
Well, I think they can be pointed as that for sure, because one thing I would say to preface that is that everything that we have on earth has come from heaven. Everything. See, today happened because we know how a day works, and it happened. And then tomorrow will happen. And heaven's what generates that on earth, not earth. And everything that you are, I believe, it is connected to what is above you. And I tend to think of it just as an amateur, in a way, to think of it to say, the part of our brain that is subconscious state, this is what's connected to who you are. And then your 10% is you're choosing how you use this being. You see, this is one way of looking at it. And I'm not saying that's the way it is, but it's a way of conceptualizing it. How Inside Out conceptualized how we think. That movie, the Disney movie. I don't know.
Yes. Oh, I know of it. I've never seen it, but I know.
And I'm not a Disney guy. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
But my kids know how but anyways, doesn't matter.
I know what you're saying. It's all around us, even if you're.
But it's about having a picture of the thing. Was all I was trying to do with that, is say that these are connected. And of course, one thing that Bob and the Globebusters talk about a lot is the electric universe. And that's something that I love, kind of watching those things over and over again to kind of gain a little bit out of them. And I really find that that's really what astrology is, but we don't understand it. We just know what it means and where these stars are. But the way they're looking at it with the electric universe is, how are these things actually connected? What is this electrical magnetic force? And I love it. I love trying to learn about that.
When I was growing up, I found out I was an Aquarius because I was born February 5th, just had a birthday. This is March 1st, by the way. And I knew I was Aquarius. So, I'd read those horoscopes that were in the newspaper or magazines, and they don't really mean anything. They're almost like fortune cookies, pretty useless, mildly entertaining, and then you move on. And then I got, I think, Linda Goodman, I think that's the name of the author, Sun Signs. I have a couple of her books. I've had them for quite a long time. And I, read about my sign, trying to learn a little more about myself. But there was always a piece missing from that. And other people who've written deeper books on astrology, I read about the Aquarius personality, and I thought, what about the emotional part that I feel, the closeness I feel to home and family? And then somebody said, just recently, because of you being on my show, and I've been thinking about astrology lately, a friend behind the scenes said, well, what's your moon sign? And I said, moon sign? I have no idea. And they send me a calculator, and I looked it up, and I found out it was Cancer, and I read about Cancer, and I went, bingo, that's about family, connection, love, emotions, and the home, and many other things. And it really helped me feel, oh, now the Aquarius part of me makes sense. Now, for those who haven't figured out their sun sign or their moon sign, or gosh, there's lots of other things too. If you do even know your sun sign, look into your moon sign. It might give you a better grasp as to who you are. But here's the thing I would like to hear from you. I've always heard the position of the stars, and we could call them luminaries. We could even call them, some people believe that they are fallen angels. I mean, that's a whole nother road. They're at a certain time and place where you are born in a certain time of place. And the heavens above are connected to you as you come out of your mother's womb. And that helps create the person that you are. And then, of course, you also have free will. Did I sum that up right?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually say it's a design, not a destiny. It's a connection, and you're flowing through that connection. You see, we're in this vessel, this body for sure, but within us, there's something that activates us, and that is flowing through a certain pattern in every one of us. And one way of looking at it is that we have primary stages, secondary stages, right? So for me, I'm a very fiery person. I have a lot of fire in me. So it's hard for me to be contained. I don't have much earth in me. And that's not an excuse. I'm doing my best to balance, because that's the whole point of life, right? So I'm not saying like I have the right to be fiery, but it's that we do have these connections. And for example, your moon, you just said, was in Cancer, right? And the moon has to do with how we feel. The sun has to do with how we live. So if the moon is how we feel, then your moon being in Cancer is a very strong position, because the moon is at home in Cancer. Each illuminary heavenly body, each one of those has a home, and that is home in Cancer. And of course, Cancer, home, the sign of Cancer speaks of home. So even more that this is at home there, it's a very meaningful part of your chart. And you have more than just the sun and the moon in your chart that speaks of you and to you, but those are two very important pieces.
Interesting. Yes, because Aquarius in and of itself described me, and even what I do now in Flat Earth, very well, with the communication and the attempt to help others bring knowledge forward, which is what I do through interviewing people and other things I've done in my past as well, being in radio broadcasting. And I thought it was great, but that heart level, that emotional level, that home level, that is a huge part of me that people might not see on a YouTube video, was missing. So that's why I encourage people to look into their moon sign if they're into this sort of thing. Now, I also have heard that we have these 12 astrological signs, maybe 13, we'll get to that. And each person has aspects of several of them, but a goal is to incorporate all of those to be a very well-balanced person, even signs that you're not, because each sign has wonderful positive qualities. Is this true?
Yeah, you could definitely say it that way. You are connected to everything in the sky. So whether your Aquarius sun and your Cancer moon, you still have other positions of the sky where heavenly bodies abide, and some that are empty. And all of these things, that empty space may not be charged in the same way by these planets, but it still has a complete interaction with who you are. And you feel that void, or whatever it might be, that has a part in your life. And it doesn't mean it's a void. I don't mean to say it that way, but you feel that absence there has an effect on you, just as much as having a planet there might have an effect on you. So all of that stuff. And this is where we look into a natal chart. And I didn't know what to do, because I don't know your birth date, and I don't know if you'd want to share all that. And I know mine, but I don't want to be like, here's my chart and blah, 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 blah. So I didn't want to do all that. But if you pull up a natal chart, what I did was I pulled up one for this moment. I pulled it up for your time.
That's wonderful.
5:55.
That's wonderful.
And I don't know if we can share that, but
yes. Let me see if I do. Sharing screen is pretty risky in the world of YouTube, because trolls lurk in order to try and take channels down. But I think that you could talk about it probably quite well because you're very expressive, the fire in you. And I think it's great that you've pulled up a chart for this moment in time, because if we talked about your sign or my sign, people will get pretty darn bored. But this is about this moment in time that we're all sharing together.
Yeah. So this chart, I set it up for March 1st, 2019 at 5:55 p.m. Central Standard Time for Houston, Texas. So from the position of 29 North, 46, 95 West, 22. So from that place is where I pulled this chart. So right now we know the sun, if we look at the flat earth clock, we know that the sun is in Pisces, and it's in the beginning stages of Pisces. It's the first deacon of Pisces, the first 10 degrees of Pisces. And that's where the sun is right now. And right after the sun is Neptune. And that's also in Pisces. That's at the 15th degree. The sun right now is at the 11th degree. And then we have Mercury is in the 28th degree of Pisces. So right now we have the sun, Neptune, and Mercury all in Pisces. And that's at this moment, if you were born right now, that'd be in your 6th spot. So I can explain that later, but that's in the 6th house.
Well, so Mercury is, I think, communication, isn't it?
Yes, Mercury is communication. That's at home in the 3rd sign, which is Gemini. And it's all about connection and communication. 3 is a really important number, as we know, right? So
yes.
Anyhow, we go from there. One planet, or whatever you want to call them, heavenly body, that's kind of one that people are keeping track of a lot more now, is called Cheiron or Cheiron. And that right now is in Aries, right after those other planets we talked about. And then at the end of Aries is Uranus. And that's the one that's at home in Aquarius. That's the planet that has everything to do with kind of social change and those kind of things. So like you said, that has a lot to do with what you're doing every day. So that's one thing there. Then you come to the next house is Taurus. And in Taurus, we find Mars in the 10th degree. So that Mars has to do with your energy, your muscle, a little bit of anger sometimes. That's Mars, and right now that's in Taurus, which that's a good place to be in Taurus, because Taurus is very sensible, very fixed. So having Mars there would probably give that person a good temperament. At least, not that person's always going to maintain a good temperament, but I don't drink coffee. No say.
It seems like you do, and I think everybody
exactly. So that's my point, right? This guy might need coffee, but I don't need coffee. That's all I'm trying to say.
What you're talking about is a natal chart for someone born at the time we started the show, but it's also the natal chart for this show you and I are doing right now.
Right.
So
exactly.
What does it mean? Does it mean that there's communication going on? I don't know much about Pisces, although my sister's one. I know about her as a person, but it's a Pisces show, kind of, with a communication aspect going on with Mercury, and some anger probably might be brought about by this show, because it might be going against people who are deeply Christian and think this is satanic. But Taurus is solid and stable and will modify that anger, and cooler heads might prevail. I don't know. That sounds good to me.
Well, it's a good story, and you know how to connect the dots. I'll tell you what. So nothing wrong with what you're saying at all. Obviously, the sun just being in the position of late winter. One way of looking at this is forget everything and just think of seasons, and then divide the seasons into thirds. So we have early, late winter, middle, late winter, late winter, then early spring, middle, early spring, late early spring, and then you continue down that road. So right now we're at that point where late winter is becoming middle late winter. We're almost to middle late winter. So at that time of year, one way of looking at it is this stuff is always specific to where you are. So where we live in the inner circle, in the northern part, the inner circle, it's cold, it's dark in the winter, and we're coming out of that. And we're at the late stages, and we're tired of the way it's been, and we can't wait to spring forward from here. And we're already looking to summer. And that's kind of the Pisces mentality. They're just looking to go surfing and you jump in the water and do that kind of thing. that kind of people. They're just ready to go. They're believers. So the show is going to have that influence a little bit because that's the time of year it is. You know, that's where our state of mind. In one way of looking at it, it's just to look at it like natural people and say, we don't know any of this astrology stuff, but the sun, moon, and stars do affect us. Whether we are conscious of that or not doesn't matter, because it matters that they affect us, and that's why they affect us, not because we know it.
Right. We don't need books. We don't need astrologers to tell us it's happening, whether you know about it or not, and has been since the day you were born. That's the fascinating aspect of this. And this doesn't rule out God or the creator. This place was set up so that electromagnetically, the sky and us and the ground are all connected and feed off each other. It's magical, beautiful, and real, and only something that we found out, all of it anyway, since we stumbled into flat Earth. So, hey, it's great.
Yeah. And one thing, just because we've touched on it a few times, where we talk about a lot of Bible believers, as they might call themselves, or people that study. I call myself just a student of the Bible. Students of the Bible who think that astrology is somehow wrong. I would say we have to start, in Job being the beginning, or Genesis, wherever you want to start. But right in there, Genesis 1, and we know that story of Genesis 1 told us all about this earth that we didn't know about. And then it gets to verse 14, and it says that God gave us these things as signs, seasons, days, and years. And that's what these things are. And it is the universe. Okay, we use that terminology a lot. Universe. Universe is one verse, one song, one verse, because it's not just a song. It's not a chord. It's the verse. It's the one story that just goes on forever. And that's what the stars are. As many stars as we could ever count, and we'll never count the end of them. They all have a pattern. They all have a plane. They all have a position. They all have a pace. And as they do that function, they are having an influence in some measure upon creation. And this is what our God, what our Creator has accomplished. And we look at that, and we tend to, in our society, at least in our time, look at that and say, well, now you're getting into like God just turned on the wind of time and everything's fine and he's gone. He doesn't care. But it's not that, because everything that there is connected. And how that energy will flow depends upon how we open up. Okay, so if we're not open, the earth's always been flat. But if we're not open to it, that knowledge does not help me. It does not give me the assurances that I thought I had. Here I am trying to balance, and I can't find a level. And I think the world's spinning. And these things affect us mentally when we believe these false projections. And I'm all about killing the false projection. And I'm fine with people tearing apart astrology. Do with it as you will, because I've studied it, and I believe that there's truth not only in our connection to the stars, but also if we look at the biblical account, much of what the Bible records through its numbers, its characters, its combinations, its translations, interpretations, much of what it is a story about heaven coming to earth. This is what it is. And you could translate a lot of the Bible through the stars, and many people have and do. So I just think sometimes we have to, just like, just not to bring him up, but Jeranism, he's getting out of the isms. I try to get out of the isms. I'm not a Bible believer, but there's much in the Bible that I believe because I've come to know that it's trustworthy. You know what I mean? And it's not just blind believing. And sometimes you do have to have a blind belief when you're on that first date and you're with this person. You got to believe that it's worth continuing. But after that, if they end up disappointing me over and over and over again, and we don't have anything in common, then I got to find a purpose, or I got to find a new mate, and that's where the believing has to come to knowledge. And on the chart, that's what that would be, is where believing is Pisces. When that comes around and comes back to Aquarius, belief has been completed in knowledge. Aquarius always speaks of knowledge. And that's why you're good at this show, by the way. I've watched a few episodes in this process, and you're good because you know what we don't know. And that's an awesome thing.
Well, I don't know if I know it, but I definitely get people on who know it and enjoy talking with them, such as yourself. But thank you for the compliment. J.P. Morgan once famously said that millionaires don't need astrologers, but billionaires do. He thought there was more to the market than just timing or luck. So he used astrologers to make a lot of his wealth. And, we're not here to talk about J.P. Morgan or millionaires or billionaires, but there are people who have a higher level of access to knowledge that now many of us all have, no matter what we make, no matter what's in our bank. And those are the people who rule this world for better or worse. And availing yourself of this knowledge can be quite helpful. Now, of the time of this recording, March 1st, 2019, we're about to go into what's known as Mercury retrograde. And people say, don't plan things, etc. on that time. You can do something only if it's something you've done before. Don't plan a new trip, but you can go on a trip if you've gone to that place many times before. Now, all of this to a person who's just reading it in a magazine sounds ridiculous, but is there truth to Mercury retrograde?
I believe there is. I do. How these energies affect us and flow depends on the order of things. And that order is so incremental. I don't know it all. And we can study a lot of it. And that's where astrology really helps with some major things. But how that's going to be affected by Mercury's retrograde, it's not a huge thing. But one thing I find a lot in that time is that communication, you need to be more careful. And I really do believe that. I'm a technology guy. I install technology in people's homes for different reasons, security and different other things. And I'm kind of the anti-tech guy now. But anyways, doing that job every day as I do, I will tell you that Mercury retrograde is the time where a lot of things don't line up the way they should, so it's kind of funny to know that and then see it is kind of like, oh, is this true? Come on, but it does have an effect. And I'm not saying that that's every time, all the time, but there's combinations. Like every season, the moon is in a different place every month. So it might be waning in Aquarius at this time of year. And then next time of year, when we get here, it might be waning in Taurus, if that makes sense. So both times were late winter, but now we're in late winter and the moon's waning when last year the moon was full, these kind of combinations. And those things are bigger deals than that retrograde, right? So that's why to interpret these things, there are multiple layers. It's not that you can't derive truth from it. And that's what I would say. If you take the time to look at a lot of it and know yourself, know where you are in the chart and look at it from that perspective, it really helps because we're all looking to know what the heck am I, right? So this is a big part of it. That's the number one part of the chart is Aries. I am. So now what am I? This is a big question that we all start and end with.
Yes, it is. It is the eternal question. Who am I and why am I? And to me, these are the most fascinating questions. And the why am I can point to the one, as you said, the creator. And the who am I? Well, I think that's a lifelong process. And I think astrology can definitely help. Now, I mentioned Mercury retrograde, and this is the 1st of March. It goes into effect the 5th of March. But there are days right before it, today being one of them, where there is a pre-shadow phase where Mercury retrograde is kind of like cranking up the gears. So it's still not that great to take on new things or to deal with technology now. And guess what happened to me today? And I'm not a person who's followed astrology that much up until recently. Well, my entire heating and air conditioning system in my house, gone. I woke up so cold this morning because I'm in Houston, but it's still kind of cold. Not as cold as where others are. I know. But I had to call somebody and it was fixed. It was fine. It was a loose wire, no big deal, but it was connected to an internet Nest system. It's a type of thermostat that goes through. It's hardwired into your house. It's the high tech thing. So you talked about tech and my high tech system went out because of a loose wire on the strong shadow phase prior to the Mercury retrograde. And our show today, when I sent you the link, you had a little bit of a problem getting going with some plugins. Now, I'm not here to blame every little problem we have with technology on Mercury retrograde, but look, just 2 things happened today. I might not leave my house for the rest of the day.
No, please do. But yeah, it has an effect. These things do. And where it will have and how, those are questions. But the truth is there. One thing for me that I've done with astrology that's a little bit different is that I'm trying to understand the one from the whole. So I'm not just studying the one sign, I'm studying the whole picture. And I've tried to expand that picture out and get into, I don't know if you can you see that image? Probably not well.
Yes.
Okay. But that image there, it's just a chart that I drew. And the point of it is the words that it says. The words are what is important. And this is a reflection of you were born and the stars were somewhere on this chart. And every one of them has an effect by what this dictates. But that is so unique that you're one of a kind. So how am I going to tell you how those energies are going to have an effect on that one day in your time as a one-of-a-kind being connected to that? It's a bigger thing than that. But can you learn a lot about yourself? Can you learn a lot about your creator? And can you learn a lot about the creation, both humanity and otherwise, from this? Yes, you can. That's what I would say. You can learn tremendous amount. And it's the simple things. It's that polarity, the negative, positive. They're not bad and good. That's not the real picture. One is outgoing and one is receptive. And if you don't have both, then it doesn't connect, right? And this only makes sense. And little by little, that's why we have the mothering and the father. These things are always happening in creation. I believe that the creator is the father, but everything inside of that being is to mother. Everything. And that's why we exist here. And that's why the mother points to how God could be. How could God be if this right here is covered right here by the stars that we're talking about, and this is all covered here? How can God be? Is that just like a woman creates a life inside of her without her losing her life. And that's the picture, that God created this dark space where we're not all as bright as him. But we all are made of light, and everything is light. But it's just as we explore that darkness, we see that there's light that we didn't know about. And they call it this kind of ray and that kind of ray, but it's all light. It's all the same thing we're talking about. And that in that dark space, in this womb of life, this is where we're learning and expressing and exemplifying our creator. And even when I'm doing like Psalm 19, for those that trust the scriptures, Psalm 19 gives a dictation of how the sun makes its circuit. And it says, this is, 19:1 is Werner von Braun put on his tombstone, right? That the heaven declares the glory of God and the firmament showeth his handiwork. So this is the beginning, but it goes on to say how the sun goes through its circuit right around through all the constellations. And it talks about this, and it says that everything that is created expresses the design of its creator. So if I have a dog and that dog is good or that dog is bad, he's always a dog. He's a dog. He never is a lion when he's bad, and he's a dog. Both ways he's a dog. And just like me, I'm a certain Sagittarius who's full of fire and a real Sagittarius. But that design is showing my connection to my father. And even though I am very far from exemplifying it in a balanced level manner, I'm still showing that fire, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. And I love your passion. I truly do. I've never heard Sagittarius before, but I love it.
And Sagittarius rules every one of these things rules a part of the body. So Aries rules the head. And when you come over to Sagittarius, he rules the hindquarters. So the thighs. So that's the ass. So anyways, it's just whatever.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows within the flat earth world and the awakening, Neil deGrasse Tyson, everybody can say boo all at once. But Neil deGrasse Tyson once famously said, and it's in a video on YouTube too, the atoms of our bodies are traceable to stars that manufactured them in their cores and exploded these enriched ingredients across our galaxy billions of years ago. For this reason, we are biologically connected to every other living thing in the world. We are chemically connected to all molecules and all atoms in the universe. We are not figuratively, but literally stardust. Now, you hear that and you say, well, everything he says is a lie. But weirdly enough, with astrology in play, we are connected to the stars. So there's always an element of truth to what these people who are either puppets or out and out liars are telling us.
Yeah. I read a book not too long ago called Bullshit. It's by a Harvard professor. And I believe that those that have organized institutions and the way that the world works, and we can give them whatever names that we want, in the end, it is us. We are the ones that aren't exemplifying what needs to be exemplified. So I don't just point the finger above. I got to point at me and those around me. If how many people does it take to live well? It doesn't take that many. You don't need the whole country. You know, you just need a few good people to hang out and trust each other, and you can start making things happen. So I'm not someone who's just always blaming Illuminati kind of thing. But what I would say about what you just talked about with Neil deGrasse Tyson and that phraseology is, within the realm of error, they are not lying. They are simply bullshitting. They are bullshitting. Just like they say we are astronauts. They're very honest. We're not going to the Astros. We're not going to the stars. That ain't happening. We're not lying. And then they say we go to space. They don't say they go to outer space. Well, space is just the distance between my nose and yours, Patricia. It doesn't mean anything else in the legalese that they're using. Everything is a word game. In the end, our conversation tonight will not be about the spirit that we have and that we're trying to share with one another. It's going to be about what words we end up using, you know, and that's why the word is so powerful. And what we resonate from inside of us, we need to be so careful how we speak those things, because that's what will be remembered. That's what reverberates off of the dome of the sky forever. And these waves are there. And I don't pretend to understand them on a physical level, but we know that, you know, what I put out, it's coming back, and I need to be careful what I put out there.
Yes, there's a lot of people who need to be careful about that. The people who lie, the people who manipulate, and they can be people that you know or that you've met before, or they could be people in powerful positions. I don't know what they will face at the end of their life, or I don't know what will happen to them, but it's probably not going to be good. And if you keep yourself at a high level and are honest, you have a better chance of, along this journey, helping others do the right thing. And I don't know what comes later. What do you think happens when we die? That's a huge question that I've always thought about, and we all have.
Sure. Well, I would say that I am a body of matter, and that body, it comes from the earth. And I would agree with the scriptures to use the word mud, being the water and the earth together. And this mud, it says that the inspiration, which is the first deacon, and we'll talk about the deacons, the 13th astrological sign that's been proposed, I see it as a deacon and not as one of the 12, or as they would call it, the 13th. We'll get to that in a minute, but what was I saying?
Well, we supposedly came from mud in the Bible.
Yes. So the inspiration of God comes, and that's the air that he breathes, the spirit
Yes.
that he breathes into this vessel of mud, and comes the living soul. So I believe that we are triune beings, and that three comes in a lot in life, but we have a mind, we have a heart, and we have a flesh and blood. And the flesh and blood is, again, a two-parter, but because it's the inside and outside of the matter, right? So even the three isn't just three, it's three, and one is kind of two parts, flesh and blood.
Mind, body, soul, a lot of people refer to it.
Yeah, and body, the only reason why I don't put body there, and you could say spirit, soul, and then body, spirit being the heart and the spirit, the mind and the soul, the body and the flesh and blood. But body in reality speaks of the whole. So body encompasses all, because your body does hold in all parts of you, right? So this is how
At least I hope so.
Yeah, so that's how it works. And so when we die, the way I would see it is that my matter goes back to the matter. It goes back. So
ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and
that's
back to mud.
Right. I believe that the spirit is one. So the spirit, by the closeness of the spirit, we live and move and have our being. So by the spirit of God, we are all alive. So that spirit, I don't look at as separated. You see, it's contained, it's embodied in me, but yet it's connected. That's what we've been talking about here. And So when I die, I look at that spirit as just returning to the one. It is the one already. It doesn't really return. It's just no longer being held in by my body. So my body's gone to the earth. So now the spirit is just a part of the spirit that is everywhere, because he is, God is, he is the eternal one. So what's left is my soul, my mind, my recorder that's been going on, right? My thoughts, this kind of thing, who I am, who I have become through time. And the example of that which I have been declared to be through the sky, that what my life is, that soul. And what happens to that? I have no idea. I believe that we face our creator, and you could call that judgment, a balancing of some sort. But how that is balanced and what is being balanced and how it's being balanced, I don't have a box that I put that in, you know?
What you're saying makes a lot of sense. I believe you will be called to task at the end. And, it's funny, when we're born, to use modern terminology, we're time and date stamped with the stars.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a forever connection. I knew nothing about astrology. And in my chart, not only is the sun in Sagittarius, but so is the moon, and so is Neptune, and so is Venus. So I have a lot in there in that place, and it's in the 9th and 10th part of my chart, which Sagittarius is normally in the 9th section. So that really pushes me. And I was a world traveler and went to all these countries and all this stuff. I didn't know nothing about Sagittarius. I knew zero, I didn't even know the 12 signs, knew nothing about them. Even though I will say that in Deuteronomy, it says that the Most High gave an inheritance of himself to all men in the number of the children of Israel, which is a creative way of saying in the number 12. You see, so God gave a portion of himself. The Most High is the way it's written. Gave a portion of himself, an inheritance of himself to all men in the number of the children of Israel, which is 12. So this is how I look at that 12. And to get to that part about the 13th astrological.
Yeah, you mentioned a deacon, and in Anglican and Orthodox churches, that's an ordained minister.
Right.
And it's funny because you did go to seminary school. So why is it in astrology, what you're about to talk about, you think is called a deacon?
Yeah, well, in astrology, they can be called decantes. There's all different words for it. I call it a deacon because,
like decanting, like pouring out, maybe.
Exactly. It's all connected. Words are so connected. When I think of God, I think of one. So the opposite of God in my terminology is none. And I look at God as now. So the opposite in that is not. Okay, I look at God as the full balance. So the opposite of that is the empty, non-balanced thing. The error, the empty error. That's what it would be, the empty error. So what is the opposite of God? Who is this bad one out there ready to get you? It's the nothing. That's what it is. It's your fear of the not, my fear of the not. I'm not going to be understood after I talk tonight. So that's what's got me nervous right now. My wife's not going to appreciate that I didn't mention her in the right way. So that's what I'm fearing right now. This isn't going to produce what I hope and what you hoped it would produce. So that's what I'm going to fear right now. All of what we're talking about doesn't exist. It's all not. And that not drives us insane. And that's where the power is. It's not in something. So when I look at these Luciferian Satanists, I think that's just a costume they put on and misinformation they speak as they hide with the truth. I mean, you're telling me that they don't know that the earth is flat? Of course they do. So when the Catholic Church spends $2 billion on that telescope that's binocular, are they looking at the sky for fun? Or are they looking at the sky because they're calculating the stars? In Genesis 15, it says that Abraham became Abraham from Abram because he did 4 things. He left his father's house. And I look at that as he left the structure of men. He left that, men. And he went outside to the place where God is. He went outside. And then it says he looked up at the stars and he gave an account. And to give an account, it's That's why we didn't learn about how the sun moves and the zodiac thing like we were learning on this app and different things. We never learned it because to take account, you have to watch them because they're doing a certain movement at certain times. And if you just glance at them, they just appear and then they're gone the next time and you don't learn anything. But as you watch them, you begin to see how they function, and that the sun and the moon and all of the planets, as we call them, they all travel in the same line in the sky, and you can watch them go around your house, you know, to a certain degree that you can see. And yet we don't learn any of this in school. Not that you have to learn some astrological principle, but why don't they teach you about how the sun, moon, and stars go around you from your apparent viewpoint? They're only teaching you from some third-party viewpoint. That's special information that they got by some secondhand source through, you know, some imaginary power that they've come up with. You know, isn't that interesting?
They teach you very light astronomy in high school, but they don't teach you astrology. Astrology is laughed at. It's just one of those hippie things, or other people call it satanic. And there may be more truth to it than what they've told us that they can see in telescopes. And you know, the drawings that were given as and told that that's what planets look like and that's what stars look like, we all now know that's not what they are, and that they're most likely some level of energy, could be sentience even. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're always trying to, I think the earth is fixed and the heavens move. In the Chinese, they would say the yin is heaven and it moves, and the yang is still, and that's the earth. So you have one that moves and one that's still. And this is the two sides, okay? So just like the moon being cooling and the sun being warming, right? There's those two sides. And, you know, so we just heaven being above, earth being below. There's always these ways of looking at it. So when I look at what NASA does, the naysayers, the NASA, the deceivers, the beguilers, what I look at with them is that they're just trying to make the energy and movement as still as possible. So when I look at their pictures, I did professional photography. When I look at their pictures, if they do have a telescope that can stay trained on something and take a perfectly synced picture of it for a long period of time, I can foresee by looking at a picture how they could take Jupiter and make it look like they make it. You see, so I just think that they simply try to freeze frame it in this way that, and suck in all the light that they can pull in to make it look this way. And it does look in some similar way to the way they look, but obviously when you look at it in living color, it looks nothing like that. You know what I mean? It's so far from that. But if you could train a telescope camera that costs billions of dollars on something like that, well, maybe you could create something, you know, I don't know. But I just look at them as, it's funny because I got this image. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a little watercolor. I see the glare on it. Sorry. It's a watercolor I did in Africa, right? And I knew nothing about astrology. And I'm a Sagittarius, and I'm all about Jupiter. I'm all about more, right? And this looks in air to Jupiter to me, right? Especially the way we learned about it from NASA with the big red circle and so on and so forth.
I was going to say there's a lot of fire in there. There's a lot of energy moving in there.
Sure. So, and that's what I would say about Jupiter. It's so much going on there, but they freeze it and they get these little bubbly lines and they get what they get and so on. But it's just not believable. If you go out there and you look at them day by day, you study them. And then if you take a telescope or a camera and you look at them, that's not what it's about. So even if you can create that, and even if that's honest on some level of bullshit, what's the freaking point but to keep you from understanding what they actually are doing and what they are, you know?
It's Photoshop because it has to be, basically. Now, you mentioned your wife earlier, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, is her sun sign horoscope compatible with your Sagittarius? I mean, obviously you're compatible, you're married, you have children. Did you pick the right one when it comes to astrology?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And that's what I was saying earlier when you talked about some of the different things and their effect, whether it's Mercury retrograde or this or that. When I look at these things, there's no wrong and right. There is that which is challenging and that which is harmonious. And if you get something that's all challenge and no harmony, well, you better bite on something, right? So it just depends. And obviously, age, order of your birth in your family, all these different things come into play as we become adults. And, you know, there's more than just this. That's still the design, but there's a lot more in the design that's affecting it by that time. But yeah, my wife and I, we have, if you study I have a book that goes into relationships, and basically any 2 days, you can look at how they line up. It's actually like a week, but within that week, you find those days and you can look at it. And for us, we are kindred souls. My wife is a very strong Cancer, and she has a Pisces moon, and that's also watery, just like Cancer is watery.
That makes a very good mother, though, I think.
Oh my God, super mother. She's mothering me, and her rising sign, which is the third most important part if you want to separate it and sparse it out, is Capricorn. So she's also fathering. So she's like a father and a mother in our household. She's
super woman.
I'm just like the friendly teacher, and she does the rest. But yeah, so her and I, we have similar souls. The Cancerian people, or people that have a lot of that watery energy, they are very receptive, and they're willing, especially Cancer, to give away their soul to the old and the young, especially. They're in Kabbalah, that would be the feelingful soul. So they are soul, and soul is is you. So it is about you, but it's about you giving your soul to those that you feel. So that's where the mothering comes in. And she's very much that. Her whole life grew up and wanted to be a mother. Wasn't inspired in school and all these kind of things, which we understand. Who cares about, but anyway, that wasn't for her as much as she wanted it to be. And she got married young, and it didn't work out for her in that marriage. But then later we got married, and we have kids now. And she's just such a great mom. I challenged her with the homeschooling, and she's homeschooling our kids, which is a big challenge. And she's doing a great job. But to get back to her and our compatibility, the 4 and the 9 on the clock are a little bit off. They're not opposites where they can understand their opposites. They're a little off. And that effect for us is that I also have the same soul as her. In other words, in the end, I want it to be about everybody, and young and old are a big part of that. But the way I go about my business and the way she goes about hers are so contradictory that we didn't learn that when we're dating. But when you begin to live together and you face life together, all of a sudden now, all the ways that I'm going to accomplish what she wants and all the things that she thinks I would do for what she wants are completely out of whack. And it took us a lot of, especially because I'm such a hothead, a lot of forgiveness, patience, to learn to create a system of harmony. And a lot of that is to unlearn, concepts of what a marriage should be like, what a family should be like, what should we be about. Sometimes it's those big things that you got to shred before the little things will start to line up right, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And it sounds exactly like on a different level, less personal level, this whole flat earth thing. We had to shred all the big things and then start all over again with the little thing. We're all in the process of doing that now.
Exactly. That's what it's about. I'm a big fan of the golden mean, or the Fibonacci sequence. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that in your shows. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of that ordering and how that is the signature. So I study palmistry. And if you look at the hands, not only is the size of the hand matter and the length of the fingers matter, and everything else about the hand and the lines on the hand and the mounds on the hand, all of those things come into play. And when you study those things, all they do is reveal what I'm trying to talk about with this thing. It's the same thing. It's
a map.
And then that, and all of them, when you start to study it closer, you see the Fibonacci spiral. And in every part of our body, even if it's not obviously circular, we have that golden mean between our teeth, between our fingers, all these things between our phalanges. Everything of this growth is following that curve. And obviously, as it follows that curve, it might be over here or over there. Just like Aries is outside of the ecliptic, not on it. And some would look like, and this is where we can get into that 13th sign, some would say because Ophiuchus, which is a deacon of Sagittarius, the way I look at it. And the deacons are basically, hard to explain, but the deacons are basically, if we look at the 12 signs, I don't know if you can see them, but I have here, this is a big picture here of Aries. And then next to that is Taurus, and then Gemini, and then Cancer, and we go around the clock. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then we get back to 1 again. Okay, so the start and end are in the same place. So with each one of these, Aries has a strong thing. So Aries is all about beginning, being. It's the willing soul. It's the I am. Courage is their strength. Impulsive is their weakness. Okay, it's a big part of self-image and independence. So self-image, it's because it's the outside. It's the outside layer. An image does mean a lot. An image does reveal what's inside. But if we fall prey to just manicuring image and we lose what it's connected to, obviously that's what we get from the world, and it's not very profitable. But image is important. And this part here would be that. As we come outside, I have 3 constellations listed. So we have Aries here, and outside of Aries, I have Andromeda, Cetus, and Cassiopeia, which are 3 other constellations. And then I have their meaning. Inspiration is Andromeda, innovation is Cetus, and foresight is Cassiopeia. So the deacons, the 30 degrees of Aries, are separated into 3 10-degree periods, which basically average out to be about 10 days a year. But some of these things are a little bit different, the way things flow in the sky, if that makes sense.
So if somebody were interested in this, as I am, now I told you I had Linda Goodman's sun sign books and a bunch of other ones. Just through the years, interest in astrology, a very vague interest. I didn't go into it as deep as you and as many others have. What would you recommend book-wise or even video-wise? I know we have your channel and we're speaking with you today, but I know that you probably have relied, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, I guess. So there's people or books that you've looked at that you would recommend maybe?
Yeah, well, the hard part is that everything is written with a globular perspective.
I know.
Okay? So when you begin to look into it, it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's very difficult. And then also with the astrology, it is also very difficult. Like I wish we could create some videos that would kind of help people with some of the things, but basically it's just kind of difficult. Now I have a ton of books, and I get basic books even, because I don't mind that. Because I draw from all that and I put it into what I'm trying to do, but I'll read anything. I have simple books like this, which was Color Astrology, which I thought was really interesting. And just someone simple, anyone can look at this book. And in each day, like we could look at my day, December 9th. Let's start there.
It's got to be red or a fiery color?
No, it doesn't have to be. It's purple.
I love purple, though.
Yeah, but this is me here, this velvet morning color. If you could see that color, it probably won't show well through the camera. But anyhow, it doesn't matter. But this book, it just had simple things. But what I liked about it was each day had 3 words. And I looked at the first word as being primary, the second word as secondary, and the third word as tertiary. And I would look at it that way. And each day would say something like this: communicative, social, and expressive. And then if you talk to that person and you're right there with them, you would see some of those things in them in a pronounced way. And that doesn't mean that someone not born on this day doesn't have the ability to communicate or be social or be expressive, but it means that this is something that you're going to see really easy in that person. Almost anyone would see it. See, that's the difference. Well,
John, read yours just so we can see.
Sure. On this book here? Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I want you to read mine, because
absolutely,
as long as you're here.
Absolutely. So this is December 9th, and this little simple book, it's called Velvet Morning is the color. Velvet Morning. And I spend a lot of nights up watching the sky in the morning. So anyway, this person is a communicator, insightful, and penetrating. If you were born on this day, there is no cookie cutter that molds your shape. You are different, and you like it that way. Born to intrigue others and give them a little shock now and then. You are quite a character. You are a great friend and a fierce ally. You can be sensitive and articulate, or blunt and cutting, depending on the situation or purpose. Try to focus your energy out into the world where you can make a difference. So that's what it said online.
That just, people who don't know you are hearing you read that, and just what they've seen on the show so far, they're saying, yeah, that's who he is. That's
right.
Amazing.
And the naysayers, maybe someone that knows me would say, oh, he wasn't a great friend. But that's because I have this nature, and I don't really burn bridges. But I would say that sometimes I'm aloof to the type of connection I've made with certain people. Not that I don't value that connection, but the way I am, I just kind of keep going. And I take that with me. I take this with me. I won't let a word fall. I'll try to, remember my conversation with somebody. But sometimes that, and then on the other side, I'm the one willing to hurt you as a friend and say, I'm sorry, Patricia, but you really need to can that. I'm that person. So that's that penetrating, as it said. So
we
that
need that.
kind of thing
we need people like that who are willing to tell you the home truths for sure. Okay, so let's look at mine, which is February
5th, right?
February 5th.
Okay.
Maybe there'll be some home truths here for me. I'm sure.
All right. Yeah, well, there'll be truth. So lavender luster is the color, which does not translate. Blues and purples, they're hard to get through.
In fact, both of our colors look to the same on the monitor, but go ahead.
Yeah, I shouldn't have brought out the color astrology book. But anyway, moving on. So provocative, private, and alluring. If you were born on this day, there is something unusual and provocative about people born on this day. No one really knows what is going on inside of you. This type of quiet or mystery that is part of your persona can be very compelling. You are smart and insightful, and your perceptive skills can be uncanny.
Interesting. Yeah. The mystery part, I don't think I'm a mystery at all, but I have my email address since the dawn of email is Miss Steer. Well, I'm a Miss, I'm not married, and Steer is my last name, and people have joked, oh, it's mystery. And I thought to myself, no, it was just Miss Steer when I picked it. And so it's kind of funny, but that is interesting as well, because I think
it doesn't say that you think you're a mystery.
Right. Exactly. I do
like, I'm a jerk with the words, because it's saying that you are a mystery. And I would say that anyone that has come to the place where you've had to unveil some mysteries. You see, so that is mysterious. If you just look at it, if you've gone through all these, like I would say as truthers, that's what we are. And we're looking for our creation. We're looking for our creator, our Genesis, our Exodus. We're looking for this from above and from each other and from what God has created, hopefully, and not from TVs. But anyhow, as we're looking for this, we are going through this as truthers. We don't know everything. It's hard to put ourselves out there and talk about something that I don't know everything about, because it's unlimited. It goes on forever. How would I know about it? And the same thing with the earth. Like, well, we don't know where its bounds are, because the sun doesn't shine there. So it's freezing and cold and hard, and there's no water, so we can't go. And it just makes sense. And they don't allow us, or whatever they want to say. I read books where the girl tried to go from England and she couldn't make it, right? Or she died there or something. So
right.
Maybe even if we could, we couldn't, maybe it's a natural barrier, just like going up is a natural barrier. As the air gets thinner, it's harder to breathe.
And going down too.
And going down is getting harder and harder. So I look at it that the creator just set up a creation that has natural barriers. He doesn't need fences. He doesn't need those things. But anyways, where was I on that?
Well, I think that it shows the creator, it shows no Big Bang just right there, because we have been kept here and kept safe in a way. Some would say prison planet. I don't like to look at things that way. I think it's a beautiful world, but we're here. We're kept nestled in the palm of the creator's hand, so to speak. And it's interesting that you said the palm of the hand, and the lines on the hand as well reflect the stars in the sky in some way. And the date time
and your energy
for who we are.
The signature of who you are is your hand. It's and that's how every part of us is a signature of our design. And we were designed. And the one way I look at this flat earth and how I really became a flat earther was, first of all, water. Water is we're 70% water as beings. The earth is 70% water as it is. Everything that is living needs water. We can't create water. Water is memory. Water is magnet. It's unbelievable what water is. So when I learned that the water, or not learned, it's just awakened, as we say, awakened to the fact that water comes down, it meets on the lowest point, it pools together, it rises up and maintains a level. And when you put that in, I said, oh my goodness, the earth is flat, as we say, But to get back to what I was going to say is everything begins with a point. And I would say that point is the center. That point is the heart, okay? And the center of a man physically, center of a woman physically is that number 8, that genitalia. That's the center of our body physically.
And we're born and they have to cut the umbilical cord, which is at the center of the body, your navel, which is, and where you're connected to your parent. So amazingly, mysteriously magical.
It is. And you're totally right about that. And isn't it interesting that this center point is probably where the tides are created in some measure? There's a lot of theories to that. And it would make sense that that would be a belly button, right? Like the North Pole would be the belly button of the Earth. So with that center point, that is the center. And what I found interesting is that if I go back to South Africa and I go back to the Cape of Good Hope, and I'm standing down here and I look up, the only place I can find with my compass is the North Pole. That's the only place I can find. So when I look at that, I say, if I'm a common man that lands anywhere on Earth out of the womb, no matter where I end up, I can know where the center is. Magnetically, I can find the center of the Earth. And the interesting thing is, it's the only sensible place on Earth. We can sense that point, you know?
It's intelligent design to the nth degree. And anybody who disputes that, I don't know what they're seeing. They're seeing a whole different place than I'm seeing.
They're just, we say believing. They're not believing. That's why we use the term sleep and awake. They're not believing. They're accepting. And we're accepting. And that takes believing, sure. But I don't even like to say that of people because they don't believe it. They just accept it and have to believe it. You see, the acceptance comes because of the social pressures, because we are a unified being and we do need each other. And I can't just go on the top of the mountain and homeschool my kids and cut off reality, because I need everybody to be who I am. I need that. And I'm not saying you need everybody, and you could be fine. I've had seasons of my life where I've been a hermit and been alone a lot and had not even an animal. So I'm not saying that that's evil in some way, right? Evil is just live backwards, right? So life is live, and everything else that, you know, these people are with NASA and everything, all they're doing is turning everything around.
Yes.
You know? So it's that's what's making it that way. But to get back to the point I was making about the Earth, is the beginning of it all was in the center. And at that center is the only sensible place where you can go anywhere on Earth and you'll sense that point with a compass. Not only that, that center point has a star above it, which is the only star that does not move. It's the only one that maintains its direct position over the Earth. All the other stars in the sky change their position over the Earth, but that star. And of course, there's a huge debate about how that star moves and all these magnetic things and all this other stuff. I've studied plenty of it and do from time to time. I don't find any real evidence to make me change the way I see this picture. So we'll just stick with this picture for now. But anyhow, that's how I look at it, is in this beginning point, this center point, this, as you said, this belly button. At this point is not only sensible on Earth, but it's marked in heaven with the one star that doesn't move. Right? And that star, they say they could be wrong up to 600 trillion miles, right? Like they don't know, it could be here, but it could be 600 trillion miles further or something. Like that's how much they have to exaggerate their numbers to create a star that never moves. Meanwhile, people are fighting for it to be not the only star. So I tend to think that's just rubbish. Or else why would they inflate the numbers?
We were talking about how we know where the center point is and how when you were in South Africa, the magnets and all of that. Well, at Caltech, their Institute of Technology in Pasadena, they did this study and they found out that humans, I'm not saying this is true, but they found out that humans have a tiny, shiny crystal of magnetite in the ethmoid bone, which is between your eyes, AKA the third eye. So... yeah. That's got to be tied into this whole thing. Definitely.
I would say, like, I would go, I have a friend, I have many different friends, and some of them have been animal help. I have a friend who does dog whispering, and I have different people. And as I've learned over the years about animals, I now have a lizard upstairs, and I have a dog, and so on. And, you know, anyway, with those things, I would say, as I study the animals and their design, it's amazing how they can fly to where they need to go, and they can navigate. And we've learned, like, I remember when DITRH put out the video about the compass, right? And how people think that east is this way, right? But really it's going this way, because you're always navigating by one central point. And it has nothing to do with going in one direction. It has to do with maintaining your distance to that center point. And that's how we're navigating. And I find it interesting that animals can navigate so easily in so many amazing ways. There's birds that have to fly 70 miles as babies to get to an island. I think it's near Australia, to get to an island to get food, basically. And their body, by what science has studied, can only fly 62 miles. So how do they know how are they intelligent inside what is telling I to go? What is it, this intelligence? Somehow they can fly from a place and then get to another place when somehow they have to depend upon the wind and and know that they'll get there and leave on the right day. Where does that come from? That's incredible intelligence.
Salmon swimming upstream to mate and die, but still they do it.
It's amazing. And how animals sacrifice themselves for their kind. It's incredible. It's mind-boggling. But from that center point, we have that center star, and around that star, all of heaven processes. And that heaven is always made up of the same pieces. We're always finding new ones, but it's the same pieces. And there's different things that are happening amongst those, and we call them nebulas and all these different terms and such. And I'm not denying that they're up there doing something. Of course they are. But what I'm talking about are these points of light, the stars, and they continue to do their thing. But each one of them, as it makes its circular pattern around the earth, every day is a new day. Every day is a new day. It's a day where the stars have not aligned that way before.
That's nice to think of, because it's a fresh start every day.
Amen. That's what the word universe means, that there's one verse. In other words, he put up a song and the record is playing. The wheel in the sky keeps on turning.
Yes, I was just thinking that when you said it. I was thinking of that song. Yes.
You knew it. You heard it in my voice. But that and that was, I told Jaron and Dave off camera that was written by I believe the bassist's wife or girlfriend. Not by, she was the one that brought that song to them again. And women are the ones that usually accept astrology more than men. Women have that more reception, with there being the Venus and the moon, while we're the Mars and the sun a little bit more than the female.
Yeah. Fighting, fiery, etc. Right.
Yeah, we have, all men have a little bit more of that. Now we're all in a different place on the spectrum, so you fall in different places. But I look at this picture to say the earth is centered, and that center has been marked in the most amazing way with a magnetic point of earth that is sensible, and a star that doesn't move, and all the other stars process around that. So to me, the earth is centered. And then what makes this amazing show of lights in the dark sky happen is that we have a flat, stationary, fixed earth. This earth is fixed, which allows us to see these patterns and feel their effects and display their energy and so on and so forth as we exist on this earth. The earth is fixed, and the earth is leveled. It's not just staying still, but it's not all over the place. It's leveled. There are mountains and there are valleys and there are ditches and caves and all kinds of stuff, but there's a leveling to the land. And that's the third part. And then the fourth part, I dare say, is that it is covered. And I do believe that. I don't know how it's covered, with what. I tend to look at the crystal idea, that there is some type of crystallization to it, meaning matter, not just energy outside of that. Because I really believe that everything that is created and inside space, not outside in outer space where we don't have access, but inside the space that exists in our universe, I believe that everything does have a matter component in some way. I don't know that. That's just how I look at it. And when I look at that with the dome of the sky, I think that there is something there. So that's what I say about the earth.
And using the Bible as a reference book, not as a religious text, you will find that the firmament spoke of, and that's bingo right there. So it's
and the same thing with astrology. It says in Job 38 that Job 38 is a chapter where the Most High is speaking to Job, and he's saying to him, do you really think you know anything? Do you really think you know anything, Job? Job, did you ever think about this? Because do you really think you know anything? Hey, buddy, did you know anything? And it just goes on. And it's just him ragging on Job and saying, like, dude, I put Orion up there. Are you telling me you can change what is bound to Orion's stars? Job, hello? And this is what it goes on. And then he says, can you make the Mazzaroth turn and make the seasons? You see, and this is the Mazzaroth is the zodiac in the Hebrew text.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and this is that picture, and this is where that whole thing comes from. And 12 is an important number. It's super important. If you study the Fibonacci code, 9 is the number that is the number. That is everything and somehow nothing at the same time. And that number has translated itself into this world that we live in the number 12. 13 is very important. It's a great number. 13 speaks of it's the card of death in the tarot, but what it's speaking of as death is meaning it's all spirit. There's no matter in it. So 13 is often like it's the new, right? It's the next cycle. It's a regenerative number. And that regeneration, that's not a part of those 12 in that same way, that 13. There's 12 principles and regeneration fits into those 12, but it's not one of its own in that 12. So we can start studying that. Now, Ophiuchus, which is the constellation that it goes right, it's hard to show, but it goes on the outside of where Scorpio ends and Sagittarius begins. And there's a ongoing theory that's claimed to be begun in the 30s. Most evidence is in the late 80s. But anyways, there's a theory that that is the 13th sign within the zodiac. And that theory is basically just because Ophiuchus is so large and the sun and planets do go across it. They really do. And there are some constellations like Aries that aren't even on that ecliptic line. So if you look at that, just because you're on it or near it or crossing it doesn't mean you're a part of it. Okay, that's one thing. And where it is, it's holding the serpent and it's dealing with the serpent. And Ophiuchus means the serpent bearer. Okay, that's what it means. And the serpent is a part of Scorpio. I look at it that Ophiuchus is a deacon, the first deacon of Sagittarius. And if you look at that according to their numbers, the first deacon of Sagittarius, Ophiuchus, which stands for honesty, that first 10 degrees of Sagittarius happens at the same time that they're saying we should be celebrating the 13th constellation. But when you change that and you add in that other one, and I'm not saying that the energies that they are talking about aren't affecting us in the way they are, but when you add that into the 12, you change the entire flow of everything that exists in reality. And that's the thing about it that I can't get on board with the knowledge I've seen. It just makes no sense when you are saying that literally we're talking about words, we're talking about resonance, we're talking about musical sound. There's 12 keys, right? 7 major, 5 minor. This is something that no matter how we tune things and do that, we're finding these numbers. And this is the reality. This is why the scriptures encode everything with the number 12, you know, all these different peoples and disciples and apostles and all these different things. To me, when I look at the Bible, I look at it as a legal document. It's a document that was legally written by people who knew what they were writing, and it reflects the truth. But they didn't write it for me and you. They wrote it for them at that time. And when they wrote it at that time, they probably could read and write, and you and I probably couldn't. So it doesn't mean that that information that's in that book is readily for me to understand just because I can open my Strong's Concordance and think that I got it all made because I got the work, it's this stuff, you study, it was numbers, right? It's the pictures of the letters. It's the order of the letters. It's the way the letters flow. It's the blah, blah, blah. You can study the Bible in a billion different ways and always find truth, right? But we have to be careful when we are staking our claim of reality on a book just because it is or is not true. God did not leave you on a story from 2,000 years ago with a book. He left you in the middle of his presence. And in this presence, life is full and the full balance exists, and everything you ever dreamed of is here if you would only take the time to observe it, to question it, to get into it, right? What we're trying to do with our lives, like that's what it takes to enjoy and to multiply, which is what we're all trying to do. Multiply whatever it is, your knowledge, your self, whatever that is for that person, but we're trying to multiply.
You know, I think a lot of people out there are saying amen at this point to what you're saying.
I can be a little preachy.
No, I love it. And are you familiar with the work of Marty Leeds?
You know, I am. And I haven't watched a lot of his content. I watched some. I really like what he does. Same with RV, what he does. Mm-hmm. And these guys, and Marty's really good. I like his ideals, I guess I would say it that way.
Yes.
Because I don't understand everything, but his ideals seem true to me, and
yes,
his persona. And I actually watched the interview with you and him.
He's a good man.
But yeah, it seemed great to me.
You can tell. And I've met him in person, and he just has a warmth about him, and you can tell that he's a good man. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The only thing with that I would say is with the guys that have the code worked out.
Yes.
I just think that as accurate as that code is, what I've learned from astrology, which I think is the highest code, which I don't understand it as good as Marty understands his code. So I'm not saying I do, but when I think of it is, as well as I can code out that pattern still overlaps it in a spiral way, and it supersedes what I know. And that's why I think a lot of times when I watch things that are about the predictive or programmed nature of reality, a lot of times I just look at it like, well, they're just coding out what's been coded. Okay. And just because it's been coded doesn't mean I understand how it's been coded. And just because I understand this principle or how my day was, that I had a problem with the Google Hangout and you had this, and just because I know all those things doesn't mean I know what's being translated here and why. Exactly. But all those little facts can make me believe that I know. And that's sometimes where I get like so much truth out of certain things, but because I don't understand what they might understand, I can only bite on so much.
Yeah, we're like Job, and you pretty much at that point where the creator is saying, you don't know as much as you think you know.
Yeah. So I get on YouTube and I try to learn. I do a lot of time. I'm such a guy, and I go into people's houses every day talking to people. So with that, when I get home, a lot of times I just need to decompress. And I spend a lot of time just kind of me out in the sky and my back porch. And I live in South Carolina, so it's kind of nice weather here a lot of the year. And for me, coming from Massachusetts, it's always nice here. So as far as weather goes, I love Massachusetts. But I'm always outside decompressing. I'll occasionally watch some videos or read or rip apart reference things and that kind of thing. And I need a lot of that time. You know, I need to kind of separate myself so I can then bring myself back to the connected, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know, earlier you mentioned Mazzaroth, and it's a biblical Hebrew word, as you said. It's in the book of Job, and it has to do with constellations and the astrological chart. But weirdly enough, it also means garland of crowns. And then I think about the AE map and how it has the what look like laurel leaves around it, and wonder how all of this, the words that we use, and the meanings are all connected. And the truth is really here once you take the time to look.
Yeah, well, look at what you just said. Garden of crowns.
No, garland, like a
garland. Okay, garland.
Which makes it even better.
Yeah, it does. But thinking of that, like that to me is the crown. To me is the head, the highest on top of the head, right? So this point, the seventh chakra, right? So you have the crown up here, and it's shiny. That's what we wear the crown, so they can see your head. It's shining up, and that's what, to me, God made in the heavens too. He made a shining garland in the sky, you know, and that garland is doing its thing, and we're being affected by it. But yeah, I love to learn. I'm looking to learn more, but it's just so funny how we'll never learn it all. You know, it's amazing.
Well, I think it's wonderful. And I think that the fact that we have so much opportunity to learn during our lifetime, and people who don't take advantage of that, I've even met someone who said, can you just kind of stop talking about things? Can't you just shut down and relax? And they said, I don't want to learn. when I was trying to talk about all of these sorts of things. I don't relate with people who don't want to learn. I really only relate with people who do want to learn. I have so much to learn, and I try to surround myself with people who can help me, and I try to help them as well. But to live a life where you don't want to know why you're here and who you are and your purpose, to me seems a waste of a life.
Yeah. And that's why they've fractionated us as people. You know, we're kind of all over the place. We're really spread out. My family's in Massachusetts and Maryland and different places. And some people are spread out all over the world. And we have the ability to connect in ways that like we're doing now. But we as a people, we've lost our support system when it comes to the local level. And I really look at it that, you know, they're trying to slow down what you just explained, you know, in that whole thing. And it works brilliantly. And I just dream of finding ways where we can pull each other together in the flesh and blood. And all that needs to happen is to remain and become conscious of these things. That's it. Because I really believe that consciousness is what will inspire us to find the right. You know, unless someone's willing to stand up, as you have said that you've done, and some of us just have that that spiritual immune system that wants to understand, and we can't help it. And not everyone's that way, and that's okay. What we have to learn is as they follow the way they're following, they're doing it because that way's been insulated with, well, you're doing it for your family, and you're doing it for your food, and you're doing it for your security, and you're doing it for your shelter, and you're doing all of the things that they're using are very huge parts of this chart. Like every one of them, that's a whole section and a whole section and a whole, like, dang, they're getting us on this very root level and being able to control us from that level. And it takes some of us that are more 9s and 11s, like yourself and I, who are willing to break out and just be like, I'm not going to accept it. Like, I need to know, you know, there's got to be something here. And that's a very necessary thing. And it's not just for me. That's why I want to share it. That's why you want to share it, because my adventure is not about me. It's about the adventure. It's about what we've learned, and we want to translate to them. Unfortunately, this world is so spun by the theories of men and so closed by the way they've ordered it that people just are afraid to come to the point where they can look at it for what it is. They don't trust their own mind. They believe that they can't balance that truth because I'm not an A and I'm not a B and I'm not a C. But I reject all of that because everything is just one after another one after another one after another one. And it doesn't matter if you're talking electricity, magnetism, human psychology. Everything is just one thing after another thing after another thing that incrementally makes it what it is. You know, and this is how they get away with the bees. You know how the CCD, the bees are disappearing. They get away with killing them because they just say, well, life is incremental. Basically, that's scientifically what they say. How can you prove it's this one thing, these systemic seeds with poison? You know, how can you say that? You know, it can't be proved because everything is incremental. And that's the truth. Everything is incremental. But obviously, that's the major factor killing all our bees. Please stop killing them, you know.
Yeah,
but, you know,
everything is as well connected too. We all are connected. Even if we don't like each other, it's too bad. Sorry, we're all connected. Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson and his thing saying that we're from Stardust, even though that's a backwards version of the truth, the stars have a huge impact on us.
Right. He has legal binding.
Yes.
Again, you see, this is what I think it's all about.
They're not lying. They're going to get away with it. And
I mean, until I started studying the flat earth, I never even looked into like the moon landings. I had a friend, Johnny Viator, who actually follows your channel, I just found out. And
oh, nice.
And I worked hard to get him to even entertain these ideas. But he'd been a moon landing person for a long time. And I never even asked him about it. I just was in a different fire at the time and never got in it. But as I became a moon landing person, thought it was a hoax, then I got into the flat earth later. And what was I saying about him?
He was a moon landing guy, and you were looking at other things, and he follows this channel, and that's
why did I bring him up? God, Johnny, I love you, brother.
Well, you did want to bring up somebody that you knew, so I did.
I
forgot.
Yeah, I forgot why I brought him up, but I love him.
Well, I want to go in the live chat and we'll
Let's do
see who's here. There's a lot of people here who've said, "Oh my God, he's fantastic." So I want to say hello to Ute. Thanks
It's
for
all
moderating.
image and sound at this point, people.
Yep, there we go.
Don't mean nothing.
James Nobilo is here, and Michael Rosati, Chocolate Saiyan, Sleeping Warrior, hello, Sooner Sasquatch, who says occult knowledge means hidden knowledge. Yes, occult means hidden. And everyone always thinks occult, oh my God, I'm scared, run, the devil. But it means hidden. It can be bad or it can be good.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it interesting when I finally got to read the book of Lucifer. I talked myself into reading that.
You were scared first, though, right?
Sure,
You didn't want to look at that occult knowledge.
Yeah. And when I read it, to me, the way I reduce it is I see they teach a principle of God and a principle of Satan, both of which are not beings, okay? But they're principles. And one is the principle of weakness being God, which is reception. And one is a principle of strength, which is Satan, that I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to rise. Remember how this is the Isaiah. I'm going to be like the Most High. So this is this energy that I'm going to be outgoing. Once again, it's just making the world a masculine place without the feminine. Just like we did with the sun and moon, right? The sun, we weren't taught this in school because it would be too order to see the numbers 400 and 400 times further away, 400 times smaller. They're not going to show you those numbers. They give you all kinds of other numbers in school about where the moon is and where the sun is. But bottom line, they're playing math games. And they do that not only to fool us on a physical level, but to twist us on an internal level, because we're not looking at the sun and the moon as an equal balance. We believe the sun is 400 times more powerful than the moon. And I disagree with that concept completely. I think that these are equal balances. And yes, the sun is always full because the moon is a picture of reception, but she goes through the cycle every month, whether she likes it or not, because she's going to feel all those things. Mm-hmm. And the sun's going to try to burn through it, whether he likes it or not. And he's going to have to hit the wall a few times before he learns that he's got to slow down.
It's like a relationship between men and women, the giver and the receiver, the giver, the moon, the female. I mean, excuse me, the receiver, the moon, the female, and the giver is the male, the sun, the burning fire. Well, not that it's burning fire, but whatever it is.
Right. And then based on, like, if I was born on a sign and at a time in that sign and I had a certain balance, I might be very receptive as a male. And some might call that being effeminate or being more feminine. But all it means is that I'm more on that receptive side as a male, but I'm still meant to be a male. In our society, I feel that these people are being demonized where they can't feel like that's male. And therefore, they must be something other than what they were designed to
or
be.
Women who have a little bit more masculine energy. They like to dress more manly and, don't really care for dresses and makeup. And they're demonized as well for the same reason. It could be all based on their birth chart and the stars.
Yeah, and to think like how we judge ourselves based on how we've learned, when so much of what we learn is, I was talking to my brother the other day, and he was saying, like, how people's concept of beauty, it just is it becomes a dark cloud over them because they think they understand the judgment of beauty. But beauty is so huge. This is Venus. It's just so amazing. It rules two houses, both Taurus and Libra. And it's that important in this picture of this whole thing. And I just think beauty is bigger than I think. And that's one thing I was saying earlier. I meant to say something as a truther. I was saying we are always going into the unknown. And when we get into that unknown, some of how we were traveling might have been amiss. And we need to be fully admitting that from the beginning, I feel. And that way they can't hold that against us. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. They have a word, I think it's in French, which means beautiful, ugly. I can't speak French, so I won't even try to say it. But there is a beauty in what is called the ugly as well as the conventional beauty that we all know of a beautiful woman or a beautiful dog or a beautiful body of water. There's beauty in things that are torn apart and destructed, or it's all beauty in a way.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like you remind me of something my wife, and I think of my wife. This isn't anything she says. This is something I think of her. Is she has dreadlocks, my wife, and she's been someone that has been called beautiful in her life, and people respond to her physical being. And it's just funny because her picture of beauty is so different than the average. And I believe that that is a part of why she twisted her hair and dreaded it up, is that she is trying to form, you know, out of the spirit into the matter, some identity of looking at beauty differently, because the way people look at it and it directed to her did not necessarily help her in her growth.
Right.
It took her, yeah.
So it's the beauty myth that she's trying to bust by dreading her hair and making herself less conventionally beautiful. But I bet her beauty still shines through.
Of course, as all of our beauties does, if we're willing to shine, right? It's just being willing to. Leo is the lion, and Leo is just the one who's willing to showcase himself. Leo begins right here at the center point is Ursa Minor, right? So this is the small bear. And this Ursa Minor, the seventh star, the alpha star, is Polaris. And it has this little constellation there, Ursa Minor. That is self-expression in astrology, Ursa Minor. And that's where Leo begins, with the expression of self. Just as the beginning point of this world begins with God's self-expression from the alpha Polaris star. And these things work on such a level, it's hard to explain, but it's amazing how in sync God is.
And the French phrase for beautiful ugly is jolie laide, Laide. I might be pronouncing the laide part wrong, but it doesn't really matter because it's basically beautiful ugly, which is what we're trying to say. All is beauty for sure. We've got some interesting comments in the chat. We had a comment from, I think it's Kill the Bank, who said, I love how we're all chatting and listening about how the stars rotate around us every night. And there are globe believers that think we're flying through infinite space. And it is true. We are, to use a phrase I used to use back in the old days before I knew about flat Earth, we are, it seems, on a different planet with the way we think of things.
Yeah. And that's kind of the hard thing with, as you know very well, with these kind of ideas and concepts and formulations and realities, is that the closeness of our society, it just shines when you begin to talk to someone, because they've formulated all these things at a young age based on what loving authority members have told them. And this is the foundation. So if I go against that foundation, even considering, they don't have to hear the words. They hear your spirit. They hear your questioning. And that makes them uncomfortable, because now I'm questioning my grandfather's death. Was it worth it? I'm questioning my father's sacrifice. Was that worth it? You know, he gave his life for this country, or he did everything he could to make this town have a bank, or he built that building and did all that work. And, or
he worked for NASA, or she worked for NASA building satellites or something else for the space station.
The possibilities
worth it.
are endless. The possibilities are endless. What people, but and I understand why they don't question. But unfortunately, we're getting to a point where the earth is flat and still people aren't questioning. Like, like if you would told me as a kid, there was a movement of people talking about the earth being flat, I would have been like, yeah, it's insane. I mean, that's got to be crazy. But then you begin to just understand simple concepts that we've talked about tonight. What water does. The fact, like Nathan Oakley's just popularized and just been amazing with that idea that air pressure always requires an enclosure. You can't have it even in a container. It has to be a closed container. It has to be an enclosure. That's what that air is held in. So how do we have air to breathe if we have no ceiling or no lid or no something helping this air remain? There has to be a force, whether it's a wall or whether it's something, it must be there to keep everything the way it is. And the same thing with matter, not attracting other matter in the way that we're told. And then they say it only works that way when you get outside of the earth,
Right.
So everything has to be, that was one thing I learned in my studies, was everything has to be secondhand, two-dimensional, special knowledge. So secondhand means you can't see it. Two-dimensional means it's not in real life. And special knowledge means you can't commonly acquire it. So there is nothing that backs up the heliocentric spherical spinning ball model except secondhand two-dimensional special knowledge. There is nothing else.
And the priests of scientism who prop it up.
It's amazing. And we've just been, and why wouldn't science use the heavens to be the way to control men? Men use science, they're using science to control life because all of us want to control our lives. Every one of us. I want my family to have something. And most people around the world want their family to have more than what they had. They want peace with their neighbors when maybe there was war with their neighbors. They want this more. They always want that. And we're trying to fight for that. But when we're not willing to open up, it changes everything. And that's the problem, even with flat earthers that may be stuck in a certain paradigm of thought. Even though they know this glorious truth, that paradigm of thought may hold them away from all these things that they say are evil, when it's their case that's the darkness. It's the cloak that must be uncovered, must be discovered for these things to be unveiled, and not little by little learning it by degrees, by being a Mason, which of course these people know the truth. That's why they have the checkerboard with this stuff to show perspective. They understand perspective. They understand. That's why they build buildings on the earth, because they understand about the earth. So these guys, they're doing what they do. They think they have a right, and they think they have a way of doing it. I look at this earth and I think this is holy ground. I think we are beings that are connected to heaven, and heaven is connected to God. And this connection is true and literal and real and for our benefit. And if we don't open up to things like we've adventured into, when these kind of things are being popularized on TV, what does it take to wake up? And that's the crazy thing. And that's where they use social media. And that's the reason why I haven't started a large presence. Even my Instagram page and my YouTube page, I don't do what I wish I could do, because on one level, I'm afraid of the masses. Okay, on one level, because we each one need to be converted, not the whole, but each one has to know for himself or herself.
This is a journey of independent self-discovery. Even if flat earthers are always trying to wake up others, it is all about self-discovery. And you only can come to this essentially on your own. Even if you're going to do street activism, those people you touch, those people you talk to, need to come to it on their own.
Yeah, they can have that seed planted. They can even change their life and their ways. But for them to know it, they must come to know it. So they might be thinking it, they might be believing it, they might be analyzing it, they might be following it, but they don't know it. Because to know it, to get to 11, you got to get to 10 first. And 10 is the Father. This is the orderer. He is the practical purposer. He's the one who gives purpose. And that would be equated to use. So if you don't use it, meaning you have full, we're talking about my hat, I've used it. I've seen all sides of it. I know it. Now I know it because I've used it. If I don't use it, do I really know it? Even though I know it's a hat, do I really know that hat? No. And that's why even in the Bible, they use that word know in the most intimate way, because that's the point of knowledge. You don't have knowledge unless you've experienced that. It takes experience. And that doesn't just come from a conversation or a gathering or a movement or lingo or whatever it is. It takes me opening up to the one who has made me, because I am one of a kind. And how I know God is one and not just some magical thing is because I am one. And because every blade of grass is one from another one, and every grass is another kind of one of grass, and so on. And we can go through all these things. And I just look at everything on that spiral. And when you get to the one that was the one in the Bible, it says, our God is capital O, capital N, capital E. Our God is one. There's none beside him. So when you get to the one, it's all light. It's all everything. It's eternal. It's the great spirit, the mothering father. It's everything in one. And that right there, I can't hold all that. So I have a connection to that, but my time is limited. My time is a small amount of time. So I'll know what I go through in that time. And what I open up to, I'll be able to balance myself and get to know and experience. But that's only happening if I choose it. So even though it's okay, it doesn't matter if I don't choose it, you know. And how many times Mercury retrograde might affect me, but I don't know nothing about it or care nothing about it or don't even mind how I feel. See, that's another way of looking at it. Like, if you feel like this isn't working, should you curse it and yourself, or should you slow down?
Right. Well, it's like if you don't know Mercury retrograde is happening, it's just like that, you know, when you don't know there's an asteroid coming. You know, we've been told about asteroids coming to hit us and you get worried. But now that we know that's not going to happen with the model in which we've found out that we actually live in, the world is a safer place. So if you don't know that Mercury retrograde is happening, there's a potential for you to have no ill effects.
Well, it's just, I guess the point with that is the lack of consciousness. It's not just the Mercury retrograde, but it's the fact that you're going about your life. Like, I feel like people think they know the end. And I believe there is no end, because I believe God is eternal and the seed of God is infinite. The seed of God is infinite, and everything that is created has that infinite seed within it. Everything. And you and I, we are mortal. We hold that seed, but we are not that seed. We hold that seed. And we can give that seed through our consciousness. We can give that seed through our blood and flesh. We can give that seed, but I pass away. So just like you talked about those salmon swimming upstream to get up there to have their eggs and put them in a safe place, when they're doing that process there that they're doing, they know this is what it's about. This is the value. This is, I'm existing for the seed that will go on forever, not just for me. And they're willing to serve that seed. And that's what I look wrong. God says, when you look up, Abraham, and you stepped outside and gave account to the stars, he said, you will see me, yourself, and your seed. And we make that all about Hebrews and Israelites and all this, like God is a partisan God. God is not a partisan God. He has no one people. He's partisan too. This is not the one, or else he wouldn't be one. He would be divided. So this is not our God. So I reject that. But what they're saying in code there is that you see God, you see you, and you see your seed. You see everything is your seed, because your seed's not your seed. It's God's seed. So you can really see the whole picture in the heavens. And it doesn't mean that you'll know everything about you or how you'll feel or about someone else, but you can learn. If you're dealing with a fiery person, you need to know how to hold that down. Maybe if you're working with a watery person, that emotion might come. And some of these things, if this is your spouse or your kid or this, you got to be careful. Like my son, my first eldest son, nothing like me. And when he was little, I'd always be pushing him a certain way. And my wife would be like, you can't do that. You can't do that. And at first you think, well, this is a woman telling me my business, my son. But no, she intuitively was connected to him, as women are long before the man connected to the child, because they got 9 months ahead of you. So this is usually carries on for a while. And for my wife, as we talked about her being a big mother, she was very involved. And I had to take that advice. And then when I studied astrology, I realized, holy mackerel, if I hadn't taken that advice, my son, he may be in a box that's very small right now.
Yes.
But he can't handle what I give in that way.
So interesting. This is so important for all of us to understand that, you know, as we've got the flat earth model in front of you, although, you know, we can't all agree on a model, but it's a good one at the moment anyway. And we've got the heavenly clockwork above and how this all can affect us and how we can become better and do better. Because it's written in the stars doesn't mean that you have a fate that's been predestined. You do have your own ability to make changes, positive changes, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that some people could read your fate and they could say, I'm going to tell you this is going to happen, or I'm going to tell you, I can see that this happened. And they might be able to predict that in your life. But what they're doing is predicting a certain point on a curve. But at any time, as that curve's going, if you go more this way or more that way, it might be a different event, but on the same curve. on the same plane on those different curves. So it might be harmonious to what they say. They weren't inaccurate, but you take what they said and make it about what happened. But it's not necessarily that like that, even though they're picking up on the energy, they're interpreting it, and it does hold true to some measure. But this is where this kind of telling the future and all these kind of things, this is the reason why astrology can be dangerous when someone wants to use it in a manner that man can't hold. I can't hold all these stars. So the way I need to learn it is learn about me, because I'm my #1 problem. Learn about my neighbors, because that's why I'm here, and learn about my Father, because he's the order of this all, you know. And this, if we can learn those things from this, and then as we're learning that, we're looking up and observing it happening, all of a sudden now we're back into real life. That's what brought, what I love about the flat earth is, unlike 9/11, unlike a lot of these conspiracies, I tried to talk to people about a lot of these things. I'd be handing out DVDs and, you know, doing anything. I've been all over the world preaching. I don't care. I'll do anything. So I did all that, and I did it all wrong in many ways, even though I had the best of intentions. But it got to a point where I realized, like, this isn't the method. So what I do now is I'm personal with people. And if they have an issue with cancer, or they have this or they have that, I want to speak to them on a level that might minister to them. And that's all I'm trying to do. And I wish to God there were more people that would wake up and look at the flat earth. I really do. And I pray for ways that we can all show that in ways like what you're doing with this show, you know, and other hot potatoes. And it's so important, because if we don't wake up to all of these things, it's a problem. But I love talking about flat earth because it's so positive. It's so full. It's so real. It's not, oh, I know 9/11 and therefore we can put people in jail or kill them. Like, that ain't it anyway. Those people are still doing what they feel they got to do in that position. And you know what I mean? And it's horrible what they might choose to do. But if you understood, I've had the blessing of going and meeting many different people. And where I live, I do a certain kind of job where I get to meet people on the bottom and the top. And it's so crazy how the most rich man can be so ignorant. It doesn't necessarily mean one goes with the other. You know, those curves aren't on the same level, even if he's a self-made man. Now, he's got a much better chance being a self-made man of making sense, because he's touched and experienced things.
I agree.
But at the same time, all of us we're so blind, because as you talked about earlier, none of us have a perfect full chart. Every one of us, where everything was in a different place than every other person. And that connection made me. And I'm one of a kind, but I can't pretend to know what's all going to happen. But if I can decide to learn about my fellow man, learn about my design, our design, it points you to creation. All of these deacons, all of these astrology signs, you know what they also are? They're animals in the sky. They're beings in the sky. That's how they've been drawn. They've been drawn that way because the animals, if you just watch the animals and forget the stars, the animals will teach you about God. It will teach you about you. It will teach you about life, because they operate with the same energies in the same way. And you have those that are on the one extreme being reptilian, and those being on the other extreme being mammal. And they all have certain things. The serpent is not evil. The serpent is just simply singular. He's the one. He has no ally but himself, and his integrity is perfect. He never fails himself. He'll sit there for 30 days waiting for the mouse to, and then he gets that mouse, because he's willing to wait. He knows who he is. That's God. He is the rainbow serpent. He is the one line. He is the coil, the electric. He is the L. We always think of God as the L, the 90 degree, the electric. He elected me and you through when we were born. That is when the energy came. But the Bible even talks about in Jeremiah that he knew us in the belly. So I'm not saying that God doesn't know the date you'd come out. You know what I mean? I don't know all that. Like, I was an emergency birth. I was born with a cleft lip and palate. And when I was born, I was supposed to be born December 31st. And I hopped out of the room at December 9th. And that's one of the things that really shows me a lot about when you come out of the womb, when you come from darkness into light. That's really the point, because I was supposed to be born over here. But if you look at my chart, it's all December 9th, and it's all that day. And nothing about that other day, you can study that day too, you know, and it's not the same. And of course it's, you know, it's on the same part of the year, so it has relationships, but it's not the same. You can distinguish them greatly. And that's why I really believe the dark come into the light. That's the point.
Bill Donahue, are you a follower of him? Have you read his works? Hiddenmeanings.com. Some of what you're speaking of resonates with Bill, from what I've heard.
Is he the glasses guy?
Yes, he's the guy. He's a Christian
Yes.
minister.
Yes.
Yes,
I
yes.
have watched a bunch of his stuff. He has a lot of different truths in his stuff, but I'm not a follower of his page or his philosophies or whatever. But I just enjoy anyone who's willing to theorize and question. That is the central part of science. That's why they use that against us, because that is central to it. You know, if we don't theorize and hypothesize, how are we going to learn? Because I don't know what I'm trying to know. So I have to come up with an idea of what there is to know to come to know that thing. So that's where that point is central. The problem is we've come to, like, you know, look at things that are in space or in outer space that cannot be, you know, verified. So we're looking at cartoons and thinking that we're looking at reality. We're not looking at reality. We're not judging reality, you know. But with Bill Donahue, I think he has great questions that he's asked about his book. I think he's got a lot right in showing how, you know, to be honest, I don't know everything about the Bible, but I would look at the New Testament and say, I look at Jesus of Nazareth. He's the Son of God. Well, Nazareth and Mazaroth, you can see a connection there. So there's a huge theory that Nazareth didn't come into existence until 90 AD. And I would believe that Jesus was born on September 10th or 11th, 3 BC, and that he died 33 years later.
That number 3 with the 3 and then the 33 again.
Sure. And I would look at it that it's a story and not a real thing. But I don't care how you look at the scriptures, whether you're talking about the Bible or other books. I think the reason why we get it so wrong is that we're meant to look at these things to learn of the Spirit. And the Spirit is of spirit and of truth. And if you're going to look at these things, this is where Bill Donahue comes in to me. If you're going to look at these things and not look at them on a spiritual level, that they have harmony there, and then also on a physical level, you have a miss there. And I think that's how we've gone awry. We're holding a Bible while all of creation falls apart and we're not paying any attention to it. And it's all precisely, perfectly purposed, you know, and we're missing it. So I tend to look at it. I agree that Galatians 2:24 says the story of Abraham and his sons, this story was a allegory. And I agree that Jesus spoke in parable. And I agree that the Old Testament is full of dark sayings and wise things. And when I think of the dark sayings, I do agree that that's just not in its full light, not in the way it's normally used. And when you put that over time and translation, I think it can get very mixed. But I think if I look at the story of Abraham and Isaac and his sons, and I look at it on a real present issue, I try to look at knowledge in the present. And I think, okay, this guy had a son and it was with another woman, and then he had 12 other sons. Well, this son and them are going to be against each other. It doesn't mean God made this divide. And it just means if you put ourselves in that situation, me and my wife have 12 kids, and then you and I go off and have another kid, those 12 kids aren't going to want to share with our kid. They're not going to want to share because they're trying to live too. And right. I'm not saying they can't come to want to share. I'm not saying, but that takes a big choice. It's not natural just to give up all that I have and all that I've earned because this outsider's coming in who claims to have a part, you know? So I tend to look at the Bible on a spiritual level, but I always want that. I believe when you look at it that way, it still makes sense. So I don't believe that there is an embodiment of evil. I don't believe that there is a oneness of evil. I don't think that that's possible because everything that is came from the oneness that is all good. So how does in this oneness come one that is evil? See, we go evil. We go the wrong way in our lives. But what we are is not wrong. We just go the wrong way. And we go that for fear of not. I believe heaven is above, earth is below, space is between, and hell is a place of not. the Bible talks about hell over and over again. And as I translate it, it means not almost every time. And I got books where guys said in Ireland, I'm going to plant my potatoes in hell because it was a place where they don't go. It's underneath. And it was just the way they looked at it. And this has a lot to do with those concepts. So I tend to look at the Bible that things have been exaggerated, but even if you look at them in some of the terms that I'm speaking, they still balance out. See, I believe the Bible tells you that Satan is not an embodiment, but he embodies our evil. He is the false embodiment of evil. The devil made me do it. You see, these people that hide the truth, they're Satanists, they're Luciferian, they're these things, and they may be by name, and they may be doing things that are very evil. But I believe this whole Satanism, Luciferianism is just a show of darkness. It's not real. Darkness is not dark. Einstein is quoted, and I don't know if he's the one that said it. They probably steal quotes from most people anyway. People like you and I talk, and then they put it to that guy's name. But anyhow, he said to his teacher, supposedly, that he does not believe in this whole idea of darkness because there's no matter in the darkness. There's only matter in the light. So if there's no matter in the darkness, where's the power there? There is no power there. It's not, it's empty. It's just void that I can't see it with my little human eyes. But if I get a P1000, I can see it. You know what I mean? So it's you get where I'm going.
Yes, and astronaut. I mean, they are not going there, and not is nothing. It's I wouldn't even call it the void. It's just what is less than the void.
Exactly. It's none. It's none. And that's the crazy thing. And what do they use? What we're doing right now, we're translating our voices onto this, web, and it's going on, and people are watching this all over the world. And we're doing this with ones and zeros. Ones and zeros. Everything's and nothings. The zeros, it's just a nothing. That's all it is. It's a placeholder. It's like the outline of that which is, and that which is the one. And that's what that's what everything is. You think of men and women and having children. You need the one and you need the zero. This is how everything works. And they've made that work while convincing us God is a partisan God who has another God who's the bad guy. It just doesn't level out.
It certainly does. And I like the phrase, it doesn't level out. I think we all should start using that one.
That's a good one. I never said that before.
Yeah. Trademark, John Orlando.
No trademarks. I don't brand. I'm not a brander, but I'm all about that term, though. That's a good one.
I think that you, although you're so humble, you probably wouldn't want to do it because, you've got your Instagram where it's a lot of personal stuff mixed with truth-seeking things. And then you've got your YouTube channel, which doesn't have much on it. You don't want to start doing like a Marty Leeds and doing conversations on a once-a-week basis with everybody, just you talking directly to camera. You're too humble for that. But my goodness, would you be amazing at it? And wouldn't we all want to watch? So do it.
Well, I plan to do some. It's one of the things that's the hardest thing for me, Patricia, is that I know I don't know. All right. I know I don't know. And that's the reason why I'm such a devil's advocate. That's the reason why I tear through everything. When I was a kid, I couldn't read books that were novels. Like I couldn't, because I don't care about the story. I want to know it. And so only thing that attracted my mind was reference stuff, the languages and the maths and the sciences. It wasn't the other things. And I just wasn't into it. And then as I got older, I learned my gift is more the exploring, which is Sagittarius' term. He's the love of Sagittarius is to explore. Okay. The love of Aquarius is to liberate. You liberate. It's a refreshing air. You're an air who carries the water, the refreshment, and you're carrying that. And that's that knowledge. Knowledge sets us free. It liberates us. So these kind of concepts for me, as I was this Sagittarian, I just, what was I saying about that before I wanted to switch to you so I could get to you.
It's the archer, isn't it?
Oh, the explorer. Yeah. I was saying explore. And for me, even with books and everything, it's just, I'm exploring that. I got to scan it for a while before I can read it. I got to read every sentence and every paragraph, like the top, and then go through. And then after a while, I'll commit to a chapter. And then after a while, I'll commit to the whole book. And little by little, I realized, why do I do that? Because every letter and every word matters to me. And I got to rip it apart. And that's why I'm a jerk when it comes to comments and things like that, because all I see is the error. And the funny thing is the 5 degrees in the time of my birth, which is the latest chart I've done, and I haven't done it nicely. It's just on a piece of paper. But I learned that my part of the chart, as best I can see it, was the expiation of error. And it's so interesting that that's the way I've always explored data. When I was in school, my peers probably didn't like it because I asked the questions and I don't accept the answers. And it was always that way with me. I'm another one like that. But that's how I learned, was that. And it wasn't because I got the answer when I asked the question. A lot of times because I didn't get the answer and I still had the question.
This is a great bit of knowledge for those out there who are about to give birth to a child, to know their birth chart, to know how you best can help them learn by knowing who they are. I think a lot of us were brought up by wonderful, well-meaning parents, but they didn't know who we are when it comes to our birth chart and how we would best learn. And sometimes we lucked out with a parent that vibed with us because of what they are. And then other times we didn't. We'd have a father who would be domineering and, yell at their son, don't do it that way, do it this way. And their son would be more having a feminine aspect, like you mentioned earlier, or a different sort of masculine aspect than the father had. Mm-hmm. And by learning the fingerprint of that the Creator has put on us through the stars, we could better understand not just our children, but our family and those around us.
Yeah. And I know as flat earthers, we're looking to prove things, and we're looking away from the heavens to prove the earth is flat, because the heavens has been the part that's been deceived from us and, held in deceit. And I understand that concept. But the other thing I think is funny is that every map is really just a projection based upon the stars, and where they stand over the heavens. So I really think we can learn a lot from the stars. And the way I'm trying to learn from them is the spirit, the meaning, the essence. And that's why, like, for me, when I'm learning this, it's not just about the order. It's not just about the earth. But it's like, if I was going to take 36 words and teach my kids, I would pick the 36 deacons. And that would be my spiritual lesson for them, through the school year, is that could they learn inspiration? Can they learn what that means? Can they learn what innovation means and what foresight means and how those 3 things work together to have new beginnings and to be that trailblazer? Can you learn those concepts? Because those concepts will help them in every endeavor of their lives. And then we can come on the other side and say, okay, we did that. Let's come on the opposite side and come to Libra. Can we learn about magnetism and that which we have naturally in us that attracts certain things? Can we learn about endurance and how we can, go through this life of constantly harmonizing challenge? And can we go through that and order? So these kind of things, if I can teach myself and my children these terms, this means a lot more than Ephesians, 3:23, be ye kind. Like, it's great to say the verse, and I know them to this day, and I love them. But if all it is about a book and the God titled in the book and this, all that, we don't know the way we think we know. Meanwhile, our kids don't even know what the word integrity or ingenuity or expansion and how those work in their daily lives. We're going to go amiss. And that's where we are. We're missing. And when we miss it, we feel the emptiness. We feel it, and it drives us crazy.
The something's not quite right feeling, the ennui that we've all had, that flat earth coming into our lives has helped fill a little bit, but there's so much more to learn. And thank you so much, John, for being another piece of the puzzle as we continue to reach for the stars together. I really enjoyed talking to you, more than I even thought I would. And I was super excited already all day.
Thank you so much. I've been so nervous with that which I've studied to bring it onto the digital platform, because I know how many things are connected to this that can then come in and rip it apart. Just like we were talking about that 13th possible sign. Like, I have no problem, because I believe all the stars are always affecting all of us. So where you put it, it's not the main deal. It's about what it is. But for me, when I study it and everything, I don't see it that way. And I can give plenty of reasons, but I don't want to be online fighting with reasons. I want to be on there showing the reason, and that's what we're all trying to do. And it is difficult. And I didn't know who to trust and what to say. And it's sometimes nervous, this kind of platform, but I really enjoy talking to you, and I enjoyed talking to Jaron the other night, and I hope I can find my little way of helping, because I think you guys are doing collectively. I know you're not totally united, but collectively we are uncovering a lot, and I think if we can find more better ways of connecting people to that, because it's not just one thing and another thing, but it's the fact that we need to wake up, that we're all looking to be level. We're all looking to be balanced. We're all looking to be full. We're all looking for more. We're all looking for these things. And these things have been defined in an amazing way that we can tune into and actually learn about everything. And that's how I look at it. And it plays a part into the flat earth, just because astrology is only possible on a flat earth. You can't have this order in the world that we've been taught. Isn't that animation amazing, that spirals, and they got the spiral right, but you see this sun rocketing as it's, railing, and the earth is raked, and all these different R's moving through. And it's like, we look up and see a star above the only sensible point on earth, and that axis never changes. And it is the wheel that is the stellar wheel. And inside of that wheel, there's another wheel that never moves. It's inside of that wheel as it turns. But as it goes around, all of the major free, we call fixed and free, all of the free stars, the sun, moon, and planets, they're moving around that circle every dang day. How does that happen by accident? I just can't understand how we could fathom it.
The wheel in the sky keeps on turning, and not due to a big bang. That's literally impossible. The clockworks in the sky. And I do want to plug DITRH's app that he has. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, that's not the correct model of Earth. You know what? It's a pretty cool app. Check it out. It's downloadable, flat Earth, sun, and moon clock, and it's got an astrological aspect to it now. Have you checked it out, and what do you think?
Yeah, I've had the app for a while, and then I got hurt, missed 2 weeks of work. That's how I got on with Jaron, because I had some time, and I was like, I want to get in touch with this guy.
So I'm so glad you got hurt, because that's how I found you, was listening to Jaronism Raw on TFR.
Yeah, and thank you for listening. and I had so many questions and things to say to him over the years, and I've never really been able to connect with him. And I did during that time, and that was a part of it. And it's been so great. But when he came out with the Zodiac, he actually showed me right before he put it up online. And I love it. I think it, obviously the Zodiac is in the corner, like this kind of thing. It's not directly in the middle as it is on the app, but the app is still demonstrating the movement of the moon and sun in the Zodiac, which is the whole thing. If you can learn how that's working, that's where we were talking about how the sun goes around this way, right? And so does the moon, and how the moon goes around so many more times than the sun. The moon goes around almost 13 times a year. That's where that number, it's like 12 point something, 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 almost 13. And this year we got 12 new full moons. Next year we'll have 13 full moons. And it kind of always works that way. So just coming back to 13. But I love the app, and I think Dave is a great dude.
So do I. Love him, love Jaron, love all of Glowbusters, and I love everybody who came by today to watch you and listen to you. And I know that everyone who has taken something positive from it, because you just give off that fiery positive energy, and we've all enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me again, Patricia. I really appreciate it. I hope I wasn't too preachy. And
you were perfect.
Next time I'll be more conversating. I get so nervous when it's public. You know what I mean?
Fantastic. Just wonderful. Loved it. And thank you very much. John Orlandello's channel is listed in the description box. Give it a subscribe. Perhaps he'll be doing more things. The more subscribers he gets, I would imagine, the more that would be the push, the prompt for him to do a little bit more on YouTube. And we all know YouTube can be a scary place with all sorts of people trying to rip you apart. But then there's the love too. And we all have felt it. Also, his Instagram is listed too. Now, my next show is going to be the following Monday. Today is Friday, the 1st of March. And this coming Monday, I'm going to talk with a guy, Al Morenton. I met him at the Question Everything conference, which happened a little while ago in the Southern California area. And he had a little booth set up talking about cannabis, cannabis oil, CBD, things that don't contain THC, but are wonderful for your health if you're suffering from various ailments or just to maintain the health of your body. Also, we'll be talking about superfoods. So that will be 6 p.m. Eastern time this coming Monday on Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. So I hope you join me for that. And until then, keep it flat. Thank you.